The Thing Within the Timberline, Part 2, What Follows the Marked. The Bob Marshall Wilderness, Montana. People think trauma fades. They think nightmares weaken with time, that the mind adjusts. They don't understand. Trauma follows. For me, it's the ancient, immortal being that stalked me in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. Because it didn't stay in those woods, it followed me home. Not in flesh, not in footsteps, but somehow in awareness and in whispers. It started 3 months after the rescue. I'd finally forced myself to sleep through the night again, meds and all, but one morning just before sunrise, I woke to a sound. Knock, 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 not on the door, not on the walls, from beneath the house. 3 slow, deliberate strikes, the exact rhythm it used in the forest. My heart seized. For a full minute, I couldn't move. When I finally crawled out of bed and checked, I saw nothing. Dry foundation, silent backyard. I told myself it was pipes, thermal expansion, maybe a dream, but I knew better. I knew the truth. A week later, I found something on my porch, a small, twisted piece of antler, curved in the same pattern as the one I saw in the creek bed. I hadn't brought anything back with me. I was sure of it, and no animal in Montana grows antlers like that. I threw it in the garbage bin outside and drove to work, white-knuckling the steering wheel the whole way. I was despondent the whole day. I stayed in my office, barely completing any assigned tasks. When I came home that night, it was on the porch again, clean and dry, laid perfectly perpendicular to the welcome mat, placed as if delivered. But the worst moment came 2 nights after that. I was brushing my teeth, trying not to look at the mirror. Mirrors had been hard since the river. When the bathroom light flickered, for a split second I saw something behind me. The shape too tall for the room, shoulders like deadwood, antlers scraping the ceiling, but with no sound, no smell, no shift in the air. Just a presence reflected where nothing physically stood. The light stabilized, the reflection was gone. I shut the bathroom door and slept in my truck that night with the engine running. 2 days later, I drove back to the ranger station. The woman who'd extracted me, she wasn't surprised to see me. That was the first bad sign. When I told her what had been happening, the knocking, the antler, the reflection, her expression didn't change. She just asked, "Did you touch it?" I nodded. She sighed, not annoyed, not disbelieving, but resigned. She explained something I wish she hadn't. She said some places in the Bob weren't wilderness in the way we meant it. They were territories, ancient ones, boundaries that humans weren't meant to cross. And the entity, the one with antlers like twisted roots, it didn't hunt for food or for territory. It hunted for awareness. "You saw it," she said quietly. "That's enough. Once you see one of the old ones, they remember you." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my coffee. I asked her what I should do. She didn't have an answer. "Don't go back," she said, "and don't acknowledge it when it appears." "Has that worked for anyone?" I whispered. Her silence told me everything. Later that night, I heard whispering, not outside, not under the house, inside the walls themselves. Dry, splintering syllables, like a language spoken by trees cracking in winter frost for the last million years. I pressed my ear to the drywall, and for the first time, I heard it clearly. It was my name, not spoken aloud, not in sound, but inside my skull the same way it whispered in the woods. I stumbled backward, hands over my ears, but the whisper didn't stop. It grew louder, sharper, insistent, calling me. I grabbed my keys, ran to the truck, and drove, as far as the fuel tank would take me. I pulled onto a turnout along Highway 2 around 2 a.m. that morning. There were dense pines on both sides and faint sounds of a river nearby. I turned off the engine and tried to breathe. I'd barely closed my eyes when the smell hit me. Wet bark, cold earth, rotting wood. My entire right side went numb. Slowly, I turned toward the passenger window. Nothing was there, but the pine trees directly across the road, they were too still, as if the wind refused to touch them. Then one of the trunks bent, not like a sway, not like wind, but like something enormous leaned out from behind it. A silhouette taller than the branches, antlers etched against the stars, faceless head angled toward me, watching, not approaching, just waiting. It wasn't bound to the Bob Marshall anymore. It had come to claim what it had marked me. I drove again in a blind panic. Hours passed, and when I finally reached a motel, I went into the bathroom to splash water on my face, and that's when I saw it. A mark, just below my collarbone. It wasn't a bruise or a scratch, but a pattern. A thin, branching lattice under the skin, like antlers growing inward instead of outward. And it was spreading, darkening, much like roots. I stared at it, my pulse hammering, and I realized something. The ranger was wrong. The entity didn't follow me because I saw it. It followed me because it chose me. I wasn't prey. I was claimed, marked for death. I sat on the edge of the motel bed until the sun began to rise. Every instinct told me to keep moving, but another part of me, a quieter part, felt drawn. Not coerced, not threatened. Invited. A soft knock sounded at the door. 3 slow taps. I didn't answer. Didn't even breathe. A moment later, the knock came from the window, then the bathroom door, then the ceiling, the from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I covered my ears, but the knocking wasn't sound. It was inside me. It was calling me, summoning me, reminding me of the river, the darkness, the towering figure bending down to inspect me like an ancient collector of lost souls. By 7 a.m., the knocking stopped, but not because it had left, because it no longer needed to knock. The mark on my chest had spread across my shoulder and partway down my arm. Black branches etching themselves into my skin, like it was preparing me. But for what, I didn't know. I don't sleep anymore. I don't go outside for long, but none of it matters. The entity knows where I am even at this motel, even far from the Bob Marshall wilderness. Sometimes when the room is quiet, I feel its presence behind me, even before I turn and see nothing there. The ranger said the old things don't cross water. She was wrong. Or maybe some things are old enough that rules don't apply anymore. I don't know how much time I have before the mark finishes, whatever it's doing. But tonight I hear whispering again. Closer. Clearer. And I know the truth now. The monster in the Bob didn't lose me in the river. It found me, marked me, and claimed me. And it's coming back to finish what it started.